Guys, you got to be good. You have to be good. I'm talking to the dogs. I have to be good. Mimi. Okay, people, and I just need tea. This is how far back this goes, Barbara. Today's a good day. So
Today
like,
is
so in conclusion of the three other anti-Black racism seminars, this is the one that concentrates on authentic allyship. So welcome. We know who we are on this call, but normally if it was within a workshop or an open room or even a group that was an engaging, more confidential group, we would welcome you and ask you to identify your preferred pronouns. We acknowledge the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations and homes to many diverse nations, Inuit and Métis people. We acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississauga Credit. We also acknowledge all treaty peoples, including all settlers, migrants, and those of us who came here involuntarily, particularly as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. We also pay tribute to our ancestors of African origin and descent. This personal land acknowledgement is a small act of reconciliation, honoring the land and Indigenous heritage, which dates back over 10,000 years.
I'd like to also say some opening words in my language. So, bonjour, megazito dem, wero kaza peshko mtishnakas, wasak sang nandunji, giwait zibi nandunjaba, jamanma gay parwad min down, chimigwach kanagago gashak tot, nishan gishgat, chimigwach also kanak, chimigwach wabanomado, jawanomado, spenchmak mado, giwan mado. Chimigwach Aki, Chimigwach Nimkibaneshi, Chimigwach Michikan, Chimigwach Mashalmas, Nokomis, Chimigwach Minobamadzuin. At this time that I have introduced myself in my language, that I'm of the Bald Eagle clan. I'm from Wasauksing First Nation, and my nation is what we describe as the Potawatomi people that are keepers of the fire, and Jamandamuk, which are the people with excellent memories. And those are the two dialect families of what is known today as the Ojibwe Nation. And my what we describe as our spirit names, mine is one who helps, and our family name is one who stands alone. And my English name is Wendy Phillips, and I'm an elder.
Oh, cut off.
I'd like to also say some.
I introduced Wendy as part of my work towards reconciliation with our Indigenous peoples and land. It's an honoring their land and the many peoples that have walked before us and continue to take care of the land for us today. So as we move into allyship, there's a few quotes that are always a good way to start to think about this. So Martin Luther King, in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. And the world will not be destroyed by those who do evil, but by those who watch them without doing anything. And many people do not know Albert Einstein helped many Black educational institutions educate Black people. And he was an avid agitator against systemic racism, separation, and all those other things that happen to Black people. A lot of people do not know that. So as we prepare for our workshops or our seminars, I ask that you do these following things, as the most learning takes place when there's reflective learning, which is your learning. So I'm asked that you must be present, like physically present, not on your phone, not flipping back and forth between emails, but present, open to discussion or open to hearing a different way of doing things, non-judgmental. Sorry. Non-judgmental, meaning don't judge yourself and don't judge others who may be making comments. Compassionate to compassionate to those whose experiences you may not know, and to those individuals that also don't know things that we tell you. So compassionate is both sides. You must be compassionate to those that don't know, as well as compassionate to those who are experiencing it. And of course, reflective. So, how do we be reflective? We in ourselves need to deconstruct what we already know. We need to resist and challenge what we think is the truth or the norm. And then we must try our best to understand the context of where things are coming from. So, our learning objectives are to briefly review and define allyship and performative allyship, outline 3 actions of an ally or critical friend, name 1 action an ally can do to disrupt anti Black racism, and then answer this question: when should an ally stay in their lane or get out of the way? For those who are not familiar with these pictures, the picture to the left of the screen, that's Yusra. She is one of the co-founders of Black Lives Matter Toronto. And this was the Pride Parade where they stopped it to bring attention to the issues of Black people within the LGBT community, as well as issues of policing, our issues of the Black and Indigenous communities, issues with policing and how they were included in uniform with guns in the parade. Of course, the other one is, if you're a basketball fan, that's how the Raptors showed their allyship with the Black Lives Matter, including all of the series last year wearing Black Lives Matter shirts. And actually, for those who didn't know, the design of those NBA shirts with Black Lives Matter was from it was from a Toronto designer, a Black designer. So there's many ways that people can show allyship. So for those of us who have not been a part of the other 3 series, let me just remind us all what anti-Black racism is. First thing I want to remind you is there's different forms of racism. And a lot of times people see the racism in your face, the name calling, the obvious, but they miss the dysfunctional rescuing, which is actually more like reverse racism. That's when you hear people say, well, this is reverse racism. It's not fair, um, um, that now we're being discriminated against, blaming the victim. So the United States, Canada, and other Western cultures are based on this meritocracy idea that you can just lift yourself up by your bootstraps, that everybody has the same opportunity, which means using that ideology, you're blaming the victim for having the issues that they have and not being as successful as another group. Avoidance of contact. That's when you hear these comments, the person won't fit in. It's not really a good situation for that individual. They wouldn't be successful here. You know, they wouldn't enjoy it. We can't accommodate all of that. Then there's the denial of difference, which is every time we hear the comment colorblind. Yes, that is racism, because color based on race is a construct in our society, and it has great impact on those with color. So many times, as part of racism, white people don't see their color because it's not something that they experience and understand, even though it's there. And so, but we do, as Black people, experience um, that all the stereotypes and all the discriminations that afford people with Black skin or brown skin. Denial of political significance of difference. So this is when we start to talk about the role of power and privilege, white privilege, ableism privilege, any types of privilege. And when people deny that there's any significance in who holds power or whose voices get heard and whose don't, that is a form of racism as well. The definition for anti-Black racism that I prefer to use is from the Ontario government's Anti-Racism Directorate. It's prejudice, attitudes, beliefs, stereotypes, discriminations that are directed at people of African descent and is rooted in the unique history and experience of enslavement and its legacy. That is very important. That's how it distinguishes differently from other forms, other types of racism against other communities. It is deeply entrenched in our Canadian institutions, policies, and practices to the extent that anti-Black racism is either functionally normalized or rendered invisible to the larger white society. Often it's invisible to the other racialized communities as well, including those that have immigrated. It is manifested in current social, economic, political, and marginalization of African Canadians, which includes unequal opportunities, lower socioeconomic status, higher unemployment, significant poverty rates, overrepresentation in the criminal justice system. And now the new research shows the Black community has the most deaths per capita, well, death ratio from COVID. So it has negatively impacted Black and Indigenous people, again, very differently. So what do we, a few key starting points I'd like to lay out as we move forward. Being an ally doesn't necessarily mean you fully understand what it feels like to be oppressed. It means you're taking on the struggle as your own. So some people, when they talk about allyship, they feel, I really feel for you. I get it. I'm a woman too. And all of those are fantastic ways to reflect and understand for yourselves. But you don't actually have to feel and understand completely what that oppression feels like. You just have to start to take on the struggle as your own. So if you're in a group that has been marginalized historically, and as your gender, and you're always speaking up about gender issues or interested in gender issues, we ask that you're also interested in Black women issues. So don't separate the two, start to include those in your own struggle. An individual from an underinvested community cannot easily cast away the weight of their identities, shaped through oppression on a whim. So we can't just all of a sudden decide those things haven't happened to us, or those the being ignored in resources or being ignored in funding hasn't happened. They carry that weight every single day, for better or for worse. An ally understands that this is a weight that they too must be carrying to never put down. So it's that idea that an ally needs to actually carry this weight as well, knowing that the people they are allies with or for, those individuals can't put down that pain, that experience, when it's not convenient. So allyship is not convenient. So if it was a bigger audience, I would have, what does allyship mean to you? And can we name a few reliable allies? So if you want to unmute yourself and give me what allyship means to you, just one sentence.
You're putting me on the spot.
Okay, then we'll.
But I would say that allyship means to me, it means showing up.
Yes, absolutely. Showing up.
I was gonna say allyship is commitment.
Commitment.
Yeah.
Those are awesome words. Commitment and showing up. Can we name a few reliable allies that we've seen? I told you, how did I forget his name?
David
Einstein.
Hunley. Oh, Einstein.
Einstein was an ally that nobody saw and nobody knew. But if you research it, he was a big ally of the Black and Jewish community.
Yeah.
In a
Yes,
time,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I know.
I didn't know that.
I knew
Yeah.
he was an ally of the Jewish community.
oh no, he was an ally of the Black community.
Yeah.
Why I'm stumped on this is because I'm thinking of people who we assumed or thought were allies, but as we find out,
Let's shoot out their name and then we find out they're not, right?
so well, we know Lincoln wasn't. I'm thinking historically.
How about we say Trudeau?
Yeah.
Is our prime minister
Mm.
an ally? Would Black and Indigenous people say that?
Probably not.
Now,
Probably.
some Black people would say that, and some Black people would say, no, he's not. He's a performative ally.
That's yeah. And again, it goes to speaking, but not doing, right?
Exactly.
He speaks a great, line, but it's not
Great
showing up
lie.
what he's doing.
And those are actually, as we get to that, more harmful than doing nothing. It's better you do nothing than be a performative ally.
Mhm.
So we're going to talk more about other allies. I'm not going to break you out in a room, but in the breakout rooms, we define, describe, and provide examples of what a performative ally is, what an ally is, and what a critical friend is. So, and I'm going to ask you just for the moment, not to share, but when you hear the word performative ally, or critical friend or ally, do you have any emotions or feelings or thoughts that come up when you hear those words? And I just want you to hold it in for yourself. Think about when you heard those words, what you thought, how you feel yourself as an ally, because each and every one of us feel that we're an ally in different ways. And then you start to reflect on, well, am I a performative ally or am I a true ally? What am I? And sometimes it brings up feelings of guilt or failure or celebration. So I want you to start to feel those emotions as part of your reflection. So what is an ally? What is allyship? An active, consistent, arduous practice of unlearning and re-evaluating in which a person in a position of privilege and power seeks to operate in solidarity with a marginalized group. There's lots of definitions of allyship. I like this one from the Anti-Oppression Network because I think it's very consistent and it gives you things to work on. You have to be active. You have to be consistent. You have to arduous practice. You constantly have to be practicing and unlearning, constantly reevaluating. That's the reflection in which a person in a position of privilege and power, which we all have, seeks to operate in solidarity with a marginalized person. And you see the word is seeks, meaning it's a work, it's a thing in progress, it's always action, it's always happening. You're never quite ever there. Black people do not, another key points here, Black people do not need allies. We need people to stand up and take on the problem born of oppression as their own without remove or distance. So I dropped this in because of our series is on anti-Black racism, and I highlighted Black Lives Matter several times. And this article was written by Roxane Gay, and these are a few quotes I took from it. And really, when you hear some people from Black Lives Matter say this, they're not saying is we don't need you. I think there's an issue with the word ally now because everybody's an ally. So in the end, we need people to stand up and take on problems born of oppression as their own. That's what we're asking for. And whatever title the person has, or however we describe them, that's how we describe them. They take on an oppression as their own. We need people to do this, even if they cannot fully understand what it's like to be oppressed for any of the categories or markers of identity. We need people to use common sense to figure out how to participate in social justice. And we believe that when people take time to reflect and unlearn and learn, they will know how to participate in social justice because it's a process. Nobody is at the same place in the process of learning and unlearning than another person. So we just ask that you use what you know as part of your assessment of where you sit within social justice. You're your best judge of yourself. What is this concept called critical friend? Dr. George Day, which was the former chair of OISE, which is the Institute for Education at the University of Toronto, he's the a professor that has done a lot of work on Blackness, a lot of work on education and the experience of people within the education system, with it, including children. He is responsible for the Black focus schools, which, by the way, are excelling. And he is the go-to man if you're looking for a professor, him or Carl James, if you're looking for a professor to talk about education and Blackness. They have done research at over 20, 30 years. So when they were doing the research, nobody wanted them to do the research, but they're still researching, they're still supporting organizations, and a lot of their research is community-based. Friendship is about healthy and sustainable relations, connections, and reciprocity. It can also include providing space to ask destabilizing and uncomfortable questions. So really, a critical friend can work in solidarity with racialized people or staff to bring about institutional change. So when you look at a friend, you define them as this person that you're having a healthy and sustainable relationship with, that you have connections and it's shared. And that person provides opportunities for you as a friend, for you to have that space you need, but also the space that to ask about, to be comfortable asking questions with a friend, destabilizing and uncomfortable questions. So if you're an ally and you feel you're as a friend to a community, and that you feel they can ask you uncomfortable questions and destabilizing questions, and you are open and you provide space for those opportunities, and in some cases in the workplace defend that, then you are a critical friend. I put one of the books, Reframing Blackness and Black Solidarities Through Anti-Colonial and Decolonized Prisons. Many of the work of the researchers and Black Lives Matter is rooted in decolonization. So that is very different than some of the other theories that people use to uncover race. And it is the theory that is used with Indigenous communities as well. And that's a totally different workshop. So how do we spot performative allyship? Let's just look at the 4 clues. I also wanted to point out there's also could be something called a secret ally. A secret ally is that person that is your ally when with you alone, but isn't really an ally in the workplace with you. Doesn't want to, jeopardize their job, or doesn't want to lose an opportunity for promotion, doesn't want to rock the boat. Those individuals are secret allies in the workplace. They support you, they talk to you, but they're not going to sacrifice and show up for you. So here are 4 clues that it's performative ally. The post on social media. And the reason I'm talking about social media is because that's been our world now for at least a solid year. and it's been many others' world for longer. And some of the things I've noticed, even within the Black community, that the millennials right now are experiencing anti-Black racism struggles, or particularly um, understanding how to navigate and manipulate through them through social media. So the social media is all about postings, likes, showing up on the thread. But right now during COVID and on any type on social media, that's not enough. That is what we would consider performative allyship. And this is from an article written by Holiday Phillips, if you wanted to follow her. So if the post is usually simple, a few words, an image, or whatever going hashtag is, it's like it brings validity. It brings collateral to that person's personal brand or course when they throw these words around. Performative allyship refuses to engage with the complexity below the surface or say anything new. So when you're on social media and you see, and we don't mean organizations that post something. If an organization posts a poster or a video, there should be a description within the bio or within the write-up, and usually there's a link in there. If those things are not there, then it's performative allyship. It's just a simple post to be in the group, to build your brand, or to let people know you're woke, right? It is almost always expressed itself as outrage, disbelief, or anger at the injustice. So, but your outrage isn't useful. It isn't anything. It's a marker of your privilege that your racism is still that to you racism is still really surprising. Trust me when I say this, it's not so for Black, Indigenous, and people of color for whom racism is an everyday reality. So Holiday, it feels that when people say this is outrageous, this is unbelievable in 2021, she says that's not enough. That doesn't just show that doesn't demonstrate that you're an ally. What demonstrates you're an ally is saying this has been going on forever. We keep hearing about it, but we don't see the changes. That would be a different reaction to a post of systemic racism. So when those deaths happen, when people are shot and killed, which is happening in Canada, there's cases right now of officers shooting Black men again. There's no outrage or disbelief for me. It's, okay, what are we doing? And if you look at some of the posts, they'll say, contact your MPP or contact your MP. There's usually an action item. And if you're able to, and you know of other action items, as an ally, put them in your post or respond to a post with a, reach out to this group. It refuses to acknowledge any personal responsibility for the systemic issues that provided the context for the relevant tragedy. So instead, it looks like the villain's out there. So it makes it seem like that, like the Queen and the firm is the villain. That police officer is the villain. Those heartless conservatives won't give anything to the Mexicans in the cages. It's like it separates the good from the bad. And that's also what happened with the Meghan and Harry interview. People deflected it off themselves and put it right back on Meghan, actually being outraged that she would make these claims of racism against the empire that colonized people and enslaved people for 400 years. It's outrageous to believe that that context of the tragedy people remove themselves from. Racism is an everyday thing, and people participate it every day, including people of color. We can internalize racism. We can do the same thing. And within our own communities, then you have all the other levels of oppression. But we must take personal responsibility for the issues and relate it to our own communities and our own lives. When people start to relate it to themselves and the communities they're in, then you'll see more change with systemic issues. But when people deflect and say, oh, that officer should be locked up. No, it's the officer, yes, but it's not an individual issue. It's the point that Black Lives Matter is trying to make. It's the point that people that fight and disrupt racism and sexism and gender bias and transphobia, etc. Those are the people that are saying, but it's an everyday experience. So it doesn't matter who the person is. It's actually the system. So we ask that people talk about the system and relate it personally to their own lives and experiences. Perhaps most noticeable, it's usually met with praise, approval, or admiration for the person expressing it. So this is really a complicated concept that we could spend a lot of time on. But the bottom line of the concept is performative allies usually get a lot of praise for being the ally. They get more praise for being the ally than those in those communities disrupting. Those in those communities, or Black Lives Matter, gets a lot of garbage dumped on them, very negative social media postings. Look at Megan. But those that are allies, they are met with praise, approval, and admiration. And that is the lifeblood of performative allyship. And that's what perpetuates it. Makes people feel good, I'm doing something. But nothing is actually being done because the people that need the approval, the praise, and the admiration are not getting it. So you can look her up. You can look up her article, but she has lots, and see if any of this rings true. Now, of course, I'm explaining this to you from a decolonization point of view, a Black Lives Matter point of view. Let's take a look at what performative allyship is. Doesn't want to come in. Come on.
We don't need fake people. We need people who are honest and true and can help us. Performative allyship is when, you go to all these happy events like gay pride, heck, even like a gay club, and you say, oh my gosh, I love LGBTQ people. And then, when the serious stuff happens and we need people out there like in the streets protesting or writing to senators, if you're not there too, then you're not really an ally to us.
Performative allyship looks like reaping the benefits of queerness, like going to gay parades and then not sending me a text when horrific incidents like Pulse happened. This was especially something that I struggled with after the horrific and violent incident that occurred in Orlando. I was really struggling to breathe. I was viscerally shaken, and I had all these friends that I had planned to go to the Pride Parade with, and none of them texted me asking me if I was okay, and I think that's what performative allyship is.
Performative allyship is doing something for showmanship and for credit. It's easy to retweet something that may give the idea that you're an ally, but being an ally means being able to engage, being able to act, and being able to listen.
A lot of people stick to this hashtag activism. They'll post love is love, but if you're not doing anything to make that statement reality, then it's truly just 3 words. We need people who are there, on the computer and off of it. You have to be there for the good and the bad. You can't just be there when it's most convenient for you, because we don't have a choice.
I'm going to move through this on the other allyships, and then we're going to take a break and debrief. There are other types of allyships. You might have heard hashtag allyships, activism, allyship, performative activism, they call it, saviorship, tourism. And there are many, many types of other ways that people do the same performative type of thing, and they do it through all of those other forms. So one of the things, if you want to take a picture of this, I would say reflect on internal versus external, just like what the video said. What is internal and what is external? What are you doing that's external? And how much change is happening internal? And are you not racist or are you anti-racist? Because anti-racist is an action. You have to consciously and actively stop racism when it's happening, disrupt it, challenge it, and those individuals and those systems. Are you a social media ally or a woke ally? Are you, is what's driving you, is it guilt or is it purpose? Do you have feelings of fear versus courage to disrupt? Like when it's time to say something and you heard something in a meeting and you didn't think it was appropriate, are you fearful about speaking up? Or do you have the courage to speak up and disrupt? Those are really hard questions because each and every one of us in situations always have to decide, when do we speak up? And if you're a member of an oppressed group as well, say gender, or a person with a disability, or even age, because we know women over a certain age, 45, 50, anything over 50 are minimized and younger people are minimized. So it's actually difficult to look at your own oppression, knowing what will happen to you as that woman in the room if you try to disrupt on another thing. So it's very complicated, but you have to look into who you are and what you believe and what your values are. So here we are. There are going to be 5 tips, and I am going to stop for a moment. All right. So now is the positive stuff. Not positive, but the way that we all move forward. This is your job. We just talked about emotions. So it's this: do not expect or rely on Black people and others experiencing oppression to teach you or help you unlearn. You can ask all the questions you want. You can ask, what can I read? But we ask that, like what's happening is, in training, of course, but what's happening is a lot of allies are saying, oh, tell me about that. Can you tell me more? I didn't know anything about that. Then I leave it up to the individuals to go look up the information if it's of interest to them. And in all my series, all my training, all my coaching, that's what I do. Be courageous and just get outside your bubble of comfort. It's uncomfortable. It's terrible, but be there, get there. If you find yourself the only white person in a room of Black people, be there, get there. Read other authors, educators, join other networks and social media accounts. Listen without judgment or interference. So if you are on social media or LinkedIn and you see groups that support, that are Black lawyers groups, or working with, like I have the Ashe Community Foundation for Black Canadians, join it. Because you're going to be a part of a different conversation, which means you're going to learn differently. You're also going to hear a different perspective. Challenge and disrupt. This is the hardest thing. Your family, your friends, your peers, anyone. So if you're at if you're with your friends at home right now, well, not right now, but you know what I mean. And everybody's saying that Megan is an actress and she's just looking for an excuse, and she can't use race as the excuse, or everybody's using the race card, which I've heard like enough times now. What do you say to those people? Do you say nothing because you think what they're saying isn't appropriate? Or do you say, oh, well, look at the context. She's a Black woman. And we've seen the experiences of Black people. So why would her experience not be valid here? And actually, I saw on ABC News, whatever, had a speech writer, not somebody that watches the behaviors. And this person absolutely interpreted Megan's body language as lying and her little mannerisms. And my response is, so a white woman from Australia decided to only look at Megan's body language, not her husband's, and decided that her conversation with a Black woman, and decided what the behavior was. In case people don't know, just like a woman to woman conversation looks very different than a woman to a man. A Black woman to a Black woman is a very unique conversation. There are symbols within those conversations. And her not saying it doesn't mean it didn't occur. The inside scoop is she said it, but didn't want to say it. So I just think that we really need to challenge. If you're on social media and you saw something like that, I wouldn't suggest completely going crazy on social media, but you might post something, or you might, if it's a friend or a colleague, you might suggest something different. 5 steps. Being an ally.
Hey friends, so I'm trying something different with my setup and I don't know if it's working, but you will deal. Imagine your friend is building a house and they ask you to help, but you've never built a house before. So it'd probably be a good idea for you to put on some protective gear and listen to the person in charge. Otherwise, someone's gonna get seriously hurt. Look, I'm helping! It's the exact same idea when it comes to being an ally. An ally is a person that wants to fight for the equality of a marginalized group that they're not a part of. We need your help building this house, but you probably should listen so you know what to do first. Let's do this. So here are my 5 tips for being a good ally. Understand your privilege. Now, a lot of people get hung up on the word privilege, so let me break it down for you nice and easy. Privilege does not mean that you are rich, that you've had an easy life, that everything's been handed to you and you've never had to struggle or work hard. All it means is that there are some things in life that you will not experience or ever have to think about just because of who you are. It's kind of like those horses that have those blinders on. They can see just fine. There's just a whole bunch of stuff on the side that they don't even know exists. So for example, there are currently 29 states where you can legally be fired for being gay, and there are 34 states where you can legally be fired for being trans. Now, as a straight cis woman, those are things that I don't have to ever think about if I don't want to. I'm not going to be fired because I'm straight, and I'm not going to be fired because I am cis. So it makes sense that before I can fight for the rights of others, I have to understand what rights I have and others don't. That's privilege. Listen and do your homework. It sounds like a no-brainer, but it's not possible for you to learn if you aren't willing to listen. So you gotta know when to zippa the lippa. I don't know. You get what I mean. But that's the thing that's so cool about social media. There are so many people sharing their stories all around the world and connecting with people that they normally would never get a chance to without the power of the internet. So do your homework. Start reading blogs, tweets, news articles, and stories so that you can get caught up on the issues that are important to the communities that you want to support. Speak up, but not over. If the Fight for Equality was a girl group, the ally wouldn't be the lead singer or the second lead singer. They'd be Michelle. An ally's job is to support. You want to make sure that you use your privilege and your voice to educate others, but make sure to do it in such a way that does not speak over the community members that you're trying to support or take credit for things that they are already saying. This isn't Mario Kart. Stay in your lane. Realize that you're going to make mistakes and apologize when you do. Nobody's perfect. Unlearning problematic things takes time and work, so you are bound to mess up and trip and fall. But don't worry, you can brush yourself off and get right back up. And back up! Just remember that it's not about your intent, it's about your impact. So when you get called out, make sure to listen, apologize, commit to changing your behavior, and move forward. Last but certainly not least, actually the most important thing on this list is remember that ally is a verb. Saying you're an ally is not enough. You got to do the work. 1 through 4. 1 through 4. As always, there are links in the video description box to some of the things I mentioned in this video, along with some resources that have been really helpful for me as I've gone along in my journey to be more conscious. So I want to hear from you in the comments. What are some sites that you suggest checking out? And what are some things that have helped you become a better ally? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and help see you want to see.
So there's lots of resources online, like I said, and you notice she also puts more resources in and then asks people for more resources. That's a role you can play as well. So to break it down, understand your own privilege and use it. Listen to the communities you're supporting. They have lived experience you will not know. Seek out resources to continue learning. It's on you to take responsibility to keep learning, not the obligation of people of color to teach you. The internet has many, many resources. Remember those good old days? For some of us who remember, we had fiche and we had encyclopedias and we had libraries. That's what we had. Apologize genuinely when you make a mistake. Allyship is a process and we will all stumble. So just own your mistakes, be sincere, and act differently moving forward. And always be genuine, have empathy, and be authentic. Validate. These are some of the strategies now. Validate the racialized person's experience without judgment, minimizing, or dismissing. That means is if you've heard a comment, if there's a comment in a room, if it's even if it's a person of a racialized faculty member, and they say, I don't like how this feels, validate it. Uplift the voices of oppressed and silenced people and support their work. Highlight when you're sharing things you may have learned from a specific person. So it's not just about intellectual property, as you all are educators. It's also about uplifting the voices of the oppressed by using their stories and their resources and allowing other people to connect with them as well. Be deliberate to include and make space for other opinions and experiences. Who hasn't talked, who is being silenced by nonverbal behaviors. So sometimes you sit in a meeting and you think that some people of color or women basically haven't talked. Well, they haven't talked because the behavior around the room has silenced them. So nonverbal behavior is 90% of communication. And some women have told me, and some racialized women have told me that it's happening. You can even see it in the Zooms or in the Microsoft meetings, that you can't just jump in. They just talk over you. So it's become even more difficult to have your voice. Ask additional questions to ensure you understand the issue and the impact, why it's important for that person or racialized group. So the question isn't necessarily as why do you say that? It's more like, why does this have an impact on you? Can you tell me a little bit more about how this impacts you or affects you, or why this, other than it being racism, but what about it is important? What is important for me to know? When you witness an incident, intervene to stop the conversation or behavior. That is not okay, or that is not true, and it's inappropriate. If necessary, raise the issue with the manager or the HR. People of color, Black people, women, people from different selective groups of oppression, they are the ones raising all the issues. And so they become the troublemaker, the problem. But if more allies were in the workplace and we're saying to HR, I noticed this, and your HR department was open to those conversations without taking down names, then you would actually encourage people to be allies, because sometimes people are not in the position to say something in that moment, but you can still do other things. Have tough conversations with your privileged group, which is one of the key things we need you to do. An effective way to support save racialized people's emotional energy is to have these tough conversations within your own communities. Don't let them slide. Bring them up. Start a group. If you belong to a women's group, raise the issue. Talk about it. Say something that you've learned. Talk about this workshop. Talk about that's something you saw on TV. See what their reactions are. See if there's an opportunity to unlearn some of the things they think and thought. Speak to and with the people you want to ally with. Don't speak over them. Share your own stories and opinions, but be mindful of how much space you're taking up and why you're sharing. Does it just make you feel better, or is it actually useful to the discussion? So I have done this exact workshop for an organization that is primarily racialized, and a couple of their board members are not racialized, and one was a white male senior person that has experience. He must have taken up 30% of the talk time. If the talk time was, or if the talk time was, 3 hours or 1 hour, he definitely took up 3 or more hours of it. And we tried our best to make him stop, but he was always talking about his experiences in Amsterdam and etc. Make room for racialized people's voices and ideas in the discussion. You may have to be deliberate. You may have to coach them before a meeting. You may have to give them some more information to make them feel comfortable. They may need to know that you're supporting them, that you will be supporting them in the meeting. This happened to me many, many years ago when I started my career at Ryerson. The director of student affairs, who just recently passed away, she deliberately made room for myself and the Indigenous elder to speak. And then she made room for Daryl to speak, because there was only 3 of us. She deliberately, and she would talk to us about it. And she would be there after the meeting to talk to us about how we felt. She didn't speak for us. She made sure there was opportunities in those staff meetings for us to talk. And when she caught somebody rolling their eyes, she said something. And to this day, if I see somebody roll their eyes while I or somebody else is talking, which happens a lot to racialized people, happens a lot to women, I actually speak up. How do you turn performative ally?
Isn't focused on whether they're looking like a good ally. They're focused on showing up in allyship to people of color and not wondering about, am I going to be seen? Am I going to be rewarded? Social media can sometimes perpetuate performative or optical allyship because people feel like if I share this Instagram post or Twitter thread, that's me doing anti-racism work. Anti-racism work is taking a deep dive within first, really uncovering how you perpetuate white supremacy and then creating change from within. Posts can be helpful because people can learn about things that they may not be aware of, but people can get really self-satisfied from that place. We see these things that happen in the media, such as the hashtag Oscars So White, where the Oscars are being called out for essentially not having enough people of color.
Well, I'm here at the Academy Awards, otherwise known as the White People's Choice Awards.
You will see well-meaning white people get behind that, pointing the finger outwards essentially, but not looking within their own community and looking within themselves and asking, how am I adding to this fact that everywhere in every industry, the majority of people who are seen as the experts, those who are worthy of being given value and award, are white people. How do I help? Some ways that people with white privilege feel like they're helping Black people and people of color are through acts that come across as white saviorism. Movies like The Blind Side, The Help, The Great Wall really perpetuate white saviorist narratives. The example of The Great Wall, we have this story that's set in China, but the hero of the day is Matt Damon.
I'll give you the shot.
This is mainstream media, and the narratives that we are seeing is, it doesn't matter what culture it is, it doesn't matter where these people come from, it's white people who are going to swoop in and save the day.
So let's have a conversation about, can you provide examples of allyship, of allies and critical friends in your world or in the world we live in? So let's look at some more examples. I'm also going to stop sharing. Sorry, I'm going to have to share screen again. So what is going on here? There we go. Do we know who she is?
Oh, yeah.
What sort of turned the light on for you about those things, and what does that mean to you to if you will be an ally to Black people?
What turned the light on? You know, I grew up out here in California, and I didn't have a lot of contact with Black people. But then when I was 10, we moved to a corporate community called Greenwich, Connecticut.
Oh, yes.
First time I heard the word kike, and the first time I heard the N-word. And one day I said the N-word in front of my father, and he slapped me in the face. It's the only time he ever hit me. And he said to me, "Don't you ever, ever use that word again." Well, I adored my dad, and I knew he had a lot of integrity. So the fact that that was the time that he hit me made me really start thinking about why does, it's when I became aware of what racism was about. And then I got to know quite a few Black people, and they became my friends. In fact, you know, speaking about, you know, when you're a celebrity and have a platform, I remember 1970 when I was just beginning to become an activist, and I hated the fact that my celebrity separated me from the people that I was organizing, basically, in Detroit. And I was friends with Kenny Cockrell, who was the head of the League of Revolutionary Black Lawyers. And he had a huge influence on me. And I said, "Kenny, I think I'm going to quit Hollywood." And he said, "Fonda, the movement has enough organizers. We don't have movie stars. You can't quit. You have to not only not quit, you have to start taking your career seriously and start being very intentional about your work." And so that's when I became a producer. So he for quite a number of years, I was very involved with the Panthers and
I'm going to move through it so you can
number of
see
Black organizations.
that's her story.
And,
just a second.
how to be an anti-racist, it involves doing something, action. And, you know, one of the values for me of having studied and continuing to study the history of racism and all the different manifestations that racism has played in this country is how important it is that we start, and I hope it happens soon, we start dealing with all of the policies that hold Black people back. Why it is that it's almost impossible for Black people to develop wealth, cross-generational wealth, which, you know, like home ownership, like where you live, all those kinds of things. There's so many policies that are part and parcel of this, what we call a democracy, that have to be gotten rid of. And I think, you know, I think that once those things are done away with, and Black people and all people of color begin slowly to be able to play on a somewhat leveling playing field, white people who are scared of that are not going to be scared anymore. I think, because when things begin to even out, it'll just become, oh, it's okay. It's okay, you know? And But I feel like my job is to talk to white people, and a lot of white people have been coming to me, and I think that's good. And and having compassion for those white folks who just don't understand yet. But they, you've got to be taught to hate and fear, right? It starts from the beginning, and it's scary for people who are afraid of things they don't know and that they're not familiar with. And I think that's up to us white people to do something about. And I am so frigging excited about what is happening in the streets right now. Open mic, you're so right. It's an unprecedented amount of diversity. There are communities here in California with no Black people, Black Lives Matter signs. That's different.
All right. Another video as we move through the end. So we talked about allyship. I believe Jane Fonda is an ally. She's been an ally for a very long time. Dolly Parton is an ally. Allies are in very strange places.
Yep.
and we need to pay attention now, because they're also doing their own struggles. They're paid their own prices. She's been arrested how many times? So sometimes you don't have to quit your job or feel guilty because you are the VP or the director of whatever. You just have to figure out how to use that privilege to bring light or awareness to a condition. So you may not be the one doing the protesting or the social media things. You may be the one taking these kind of seminars, introducing these practices into the workplace. There's so many different ways you can be an ally.
Hey guys, can I get you anything else?
Yes. Could we have some more iced teas and a smile? I mean, your day can't be going that bad. Hate to see you leave, would love to watch you go, man.
Oh, I cannot believe what I just saw.
Yeah, Pops. Way to be a creep. Not him. You. Can't just tell a woman to smile. I was being nice. It looked as if she was having a bad day, so I was just trying to cheer her up.
By telling her what to do with her face? When's the last time you told a man to smile?
Pops was so much worse.
He's too old to be learning new tricks. He'll be dead soon. No offense.
None taken. I'm just here for the free meal and maybe a personal size cobbler with a sparkler in it.
Oh, here she comes. Apologize.
I don't have anything to apologize
Will that
for.
be all?
You know, can I ask you a question? Did I make you feel uncomfortable when I told you to smile?
If at any time during this conversation you feel uncomfortable, just use the safe word calamari.
Also, we'd like to order some more calamari.
Oh yeah, this is bomb.
Honestly, it was annoying. I hear you should smile from creepy dudes every day.
That's not how I meant it, okay? I'm not creepy. All right, the rules just keep changing around me. I can't be a gentleman. I can't try to cheer you up. Next, you're probably going to tell me I can't call you little mom or baby girl.
Chad, we have a code blue. It's my break. Chad's got you.
Okay, that's it. I give up. I'm never going to get this. It's too late for me. Get out of here. Save yourselves. It's too late for me.
Cool.
So, calamari for the table.
Don't tell him to smile.
So some of you may watch Blackish, which is a very popular show with the Black community. And it is really about being called out and how you respond when you're called out. First of all, would anybody like to make a comment about what they saw? This is still recorded. Well, I can just continue. Like, you saw what you saw.
Yeah. And I've seen that episode and I
Okay.
remember it. Yeah, and I remember it.
And he himself is a member
Yeah.
of an oppressed group.
Yep.
But at the very same time that he feels he's this wonderful guy,
Yeah.
he's doing this to a woman.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is a very common behavior for women,
Yep.
for women to receive, and
Yep.
is particularly common for Black women because we're always seen as not smiling enough. I've been, even at executive levels, I've been told, smile more. And I'm like, no. I just say no. And then they say I'm abrasive.
Yep.
You're abrasive. You told me to smile.
Yep. Yep.
So how do you being called out and in? Center yourself when it happens. He felt attacked, but you're not being attacked. You're a good person. This is about your behavior and stopping harm to others.
Yep.
So if somebody calls you out about maybe your form of allyship or something you've said, and it was just by mistake, just center yourself. You know, don't take it as a personal attack on you, Lisa. Take that as, wow, what did I just do? Listen, don't interrupt or think ways to defend yourself like this man did. Focus on learning what was harmful and being empathetic and compassionate. Understand how harmful that is. He couldn't understand that because he's a man, but he would always considers himself an ally to women. Well, that's not being an ally. That's perpetuating and reproducing the same things that we experience as women. Acknowledgement and apology. Instead of explaining why you did it, acknowledge what happened and apologize if needed or requested for the harm you've caused. So you see how he went and asked her, did I do something wrong? And it was a rhetorical question like, no, I didn't. He should have just said, I'm sorry for making you uncomfortable. I should never have asked you or expect you to smile. That was it. He just couldn't do it. Inquire. If you consent and have time and resources, ask what you have done instead of how you amend what's happened. Moving forward, the best apology is changed behavior. If they give you reasonable recommendations and amends to do them, don't do the harm again. Use this experience to help others learn too. So this gives you the opportunity as an ally to use this example. Oh man, I did this and I just put my foot in my mouth. I'm trying to do this. And at the same time I did this. People will start to feel that humanity in it and feel that it's okay to make mistakes. And it's okay to apologize for those mistakes. So as we wrap up, I thought we could practice two things. We're going to talk about, we're going to have a debrief a bit as an ally, what would you do for Black Lives Matter Toronto? And then I have a chart that explains the experiences of Black women in organizations. So I'm not taping this. Yeah. Oh, I forgot to record it.